Hey everybody, it's your Sam and I'm here with another video. Today I kind of wanted to talk about why I write the genres that I do. Now, for those of you who have been following along on my journey, if you can call it that, we've kind of hop, skipped, and jumped around a little bit. But for those of you that have been following the madness, you know that I mostly write in fantasy, and I usually have subplots in that fantasy with romance. I also write romance. I do dabble here and there in other things. I've done some short stories in horror. I have dabbled a little bit in science fiction as well. I do a little bit of everything. But for the sake of this video, I am just going to talk about fantasy and romance. I started reading at a very early age. I remember there being some stories read to me, but most of them were verbally shared with me. And most of those verbal stories were very realistic. They happened in real life. They were nonfiction. But they always seemed kind of fantastical to me because it was of somebody else's life. And I took those stories in my head and created larger stories. I created worlds with them, and I would dream of grander things, such as the story of my dad being followed by a bobcat, and I took that bobcat and made it a creature of the night that defied description and defied the laws of Earth. That was one of the very first stories I remember making up. Now, of course, I didn't write any of that down, but I do remember it, and eventually I will write it down. Some of the earlier books that I read were fantasy. The Hobbit, one of my most memorable reads. And then Jane Austen was the second most I remember reading. So there is fantasy and there's romance. And there's also a dash of comedy in there. I like having a little bit of laugh going on. And I also like having little splashes of darkness in there too. The reason why I write fantasy and romance is because they were some of the earliest books that I remember reading. They always drew me to them. The fantasy books had covers that were magical and appealed to my senses. And then when I started reading them, they appealed to my senses even further. I was taken into new worlds and into new lives and with new animals to watch and explore and imagine. Because I am an animal lover, so of course fantasy to me is highly focused on the animals of the world. And I was drawn to romance because everybody wants to feel a little bit of love, and romance to me was a way to experience love without maybe having experienced it in real life. I was a very odd child, very rather lonely and enclosed. I kept in my little box. So seeing people get intimate with one another, know each other's secrets, and still find peace with each other and camaraderie was something that interested me a lot. So that's the reason why I am drawn to fantasy and romance. The reason why I write fantasy and romance is a lot of the same reasons as that. I want to build fantastical worlds. I want my readers to get lost in those fantasy worlds. I want my readers to fall in love with characters that are in these fantasy worlds that have to deal with these magical creatures or creatures that are unworldly. I want my readers to be able to fall in love with my characters because they're lovable, and I want to have my readers experience the emotion of falling in love as my characters do. So yeah, that's the reason why I write my genres. I've always loved and adored creating new worlds, creating new animals, creating new characters. And that's the reason why I'm a writer. I love creating things. I love writing things down. I love sharing stories. That's the reason why I write the genres that I do. Let me know in the comments down below why you write your genres. As always, be kind to one another out there, stay safe, keep writing, keep being creative, and I will see you next time.